I'm part of that generation where social media just started to become a thing. So it started with no idea what happened to that guy to, hey, he's right here. Wonder what's up with him. It's kind of changed how you can deal with the past people in your lives, what kind of contact you can have with them, or basically just look in on what they're doing nowadays if they're active. So that's what leads to this video right here. When people met their high school bully as an adult. Stories? Story 1. In high school, I was terribly emotionally bullied by this one girl who thinks so highly of herself in my class. The bullying went on for 3 years during that time. She would sweet-talk me into giving her some stuff such as chocolates, stationery, etc. I was labeled as the quiet and shy girl at the moment, so I was an easy target for her and her stupid gang. I don't know why exactly she hated me that much, but I'd always assumed she didn't like quiet people, so she manipulated me to stay by her side so she could ridicule me every day. I was desperate to make new friends at that time, and my social skills weren't that great at all, so I stupidly stayed by her side. One day, she decided to ignore my existence and even tried so hard to replace me with a new transfer student. I was devastated to see my seat in the classroom taken by the new student, but I didn't let my emotions show that much. I simply went to a different seat with a different group. Fortunately, this group is a lot nicer and friendlier than the bullies, so I gladly befriended them. Meanwhile, my bullies started to have a rough time catching up with the lectures because I've always been their backbone since the very start. I was the one who managed their group projects, answering questions, and I even allowed them to plagiarize my assignments. As days passed by, their group began to crumble, thus ending up becoming a complete burden to the whole class. I just sat at my place and quietly observed them as they fought with each other. Honestly, I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy seeing them suffer. I'm jubilant to see them desperately trying to win me back. Too bad for them, I got into a much advanced class the year after. After that, I was never the same anymore. In this new class, I managed to get out of my comfort zone and hone my social skills. Here, I met so many amazing people who treat everyone respectfully, and I also get the chance to be best friends with 3 people in my table group. I was very lucky to be in the same class with them for 2 years because they're awesome. Unfortunately, we had to part ways after graduating high school. I graduated in 2021. It was supposed to be 2020, but COVID kind of ruined it. Now in college, I stumbled upon the very same girl who bullied me for 3 years straight. FYI, my physical appearance was very different when I was in high school than in college. In high school, I looked very feminine and very awkward. Now in college, I look more masculine with my hair being short and all. Plus, I'm more confident nowadays, and I've also gained popularity among the students in my school, so people would always talk about me, which I'm still not used to because I really don't like it when people make me the center of attention. So when the bully saw me, she immediately came to me and started to compliment me and tried really hard to playfully flirt with me. I was beyond disgusted at her behavior as she acted like nothing had happened. I could tell she had no remorse when she bullied me years ago because she never apologized to me whatsoever. For years, I've been thinking, spiraling over the unknown reason as to why she hated me that much. It really messed up my mental health back then. So, in return, I partially ignored her back. I didn't have the guts to completely ignore her because I don't want to be the jerkwad in someone else's eyes. Only a few knew that she'd bullied me, so I don't really like to talk about our past that much. I could visibly see the envy in her eyes as her friends talked so highly of me. Kind of funny when she tried to call me handsome in front of many people so she could win me. But nah, bro, you were a monster to me. This kind of behavior sounds sociopathic. I bet she didn't think she would remember all this behavior. Either that or she tried to worm her way back in by believing she was still very desperate for friends. She didn't think that it would be the case that she actually was able to grow her social skills. It's amazing when you can find the strength within yourself to ignore what you thought was control over you. Story 2. In high school, I had my first bully. He was huge. 6'2", 15 years old, who only got taller as the years went by. A fairly aggressive guy, constantly mouthing off and butting into conversations. Not really popular, but well known. I had nearly every class with him from freshman year to senior year. I can't say he ever beat me up, but his favorite thing to do were pinching, pushing, swats to my body, mainly head, and wedgies. I was also the only person he bullied. People would constantly tell me he was a good guy, just a bit of a jerkwad. Then they would see how he interacted with me and just be like, yeah, I don't know what his issue with you is. It was particularly bad in freshman and sophomore year. I didn't really fear him. I was always just, oh great, him again, each year when we got the same classes over and over. Some people mistook us as really good friends, mainly because we were always together and would banter between each other. He wasn't always so bad. I remember having some genuinely funny and good conversations with him. There were even times when he would stick up for me. I would lend him pencils because he would always forget. He was still a total jerkwad, though. It's just when I was nice to him, he was nicer. When I would combat his bullying, telling him to back off or swat away his hands, the bullying would get worse. So it was better to just be nice and have things be neutral or positive. It was mentally draining and didn't stop all of it. Some days he was just moody or attention hungry, and he knew he could get what he needed from me. Anyway, when we graduated, he actually said that he would miss me. I told him I would not miss him, and that I thought he was a jerkwad. I hurt his feelings, I could tell, because he stormed off, and that was the last time I saw him. Just recently, actually, I ended up randomly seeing him in a Wawa. The dude's like 6'7". He's hard to miss. I was going to ignore him, but he noticed me almost at the same time. He came over to me and started talking to me. He ended up becoming a trucker, has a large house and pool. It felt like he was bragging. He ended up asking me to dinner, but I declined. Then he asked if I would go sit on the bench outside and talk for a few minutes. I agreed to that, but told him a friend was waiting for me, so not for long. There was no friend waiting, by the way. He explained to me that his high school years were very difficult for him, and that I felt like his only friend. He, for some reason, thought I liked him picking on me. He also confessed to being bisexual and having a huge crush on me, but didn't know how to express it. I was shocked when he told me. He's very macho, so I didn't even consider the possibility. But when I think back, it explains a lot. He ended up giving me his phone number and said that he's changed and we should hang out. I took it to be polite, telling him I would think about it. We've done very casual text between us. He keeps pushing to hang out. I don't know if I'm ready to let my bully back into my life as a friend. He never even apologized, just explained why he did what he did. I'm admittedly more scared of him now than inside school, and I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe because there's no supervision? Anyway, that's how that went almost 3 weeks ago. He still texts me a good morning every day. Sometimes the story is just not crystal clear, black and white. I wonder if it's just reasonable to maybe meet in neutral places for a while. I mean, not go to a house, but maybe go out for coffee. Just be in places where you know you can just get out. This guy still seems like he has trouble making friends. Maybe see what it's like. And if need be, just be expressive. This guy had his chance to talk about what it was all about and explaining what's happening. I think if they really want a relationship, this guy needs to be able to tell his side. Story 3. I have 2 fun ones. 1. I was a senior in high school when this happened. So as most people who went to public schools probably remember, the student teachers who would shadow the teachers during the second half of the second year. For context, I was an emo scene kid. So most of us guys who were in this style had long hair that we would straighten, wore bright colored t-shirts, skinny jeans, and high tops or bulky skate shoes. I was constantly called a girl, fruity, things like that. I played drums in a band that was starting to gain popularity amongst the fellow kids in school, and I also played in a jazz band. One of the kids in my math class was one of those who called me those names. We had this really, really pretty student teacher we will call Hannah. Hannah was a blonde with that ombre hair from 2010 that was popular in that period. I got her phone number in front of this guy, and she even came to my show. Lost touch with her a few years later, but it was so funny that I was the person who got the hot student teacher's phone number. 2. This was when I was in 7th or 8th grade. These kids we will call Frank and Josh were absolutely awful to me. I went to a Catholic school and was an outcast as I hadn't attended K-6 there. Frank and Josh at first weren't too bad, but I started to get tormented by Josh for no reason. Frank and I were decent friends until one day he decided to follow the rest of the jerkwads who bullied me. He threw water at me, called me names, and made fun of my clothes. Fast forward to grade 8, Josh decided to continue to bully me, and I threatened him, and then he cried to his mom, who then complained to the principal, and I got expelled because I threatened to really hurt him and he got scared. Mind you, I weighed maybe 100 pounds soaking wet. Fast forward to 2021, Frank is an ex-convict who stole a bunch of things and did some time in prison. Josh works with me at my job. He's lazy and self-terminating. I called him out the first day I worked with him and told him I forgive him for being a jerk to me. He was living in a broken home, which sucks for anyone. However, I found out he's bad-mouthing me at work, so I make sure to tell my supervisors he's bringing his laptop into work and playing video games instead of doing his job, and now our CEOs and execs are watching us all, and he's on the chopping block. Patience pays off. I wonder if this guy ever went to the principal and confronted him about how these two ended up. One ends up doing time, and the other ends up working for the guy. What kind of job were they doing anyway? Was it IT? And how big is this town? Was it a small town so they would end up working together? Or is it a big town and it's just a coincidence that they ended up working at the same place? Story 4. When I was in grade 7, I was relentlessly bullied by this 8th grader, Joel. I had no self-confidence and just some loner skater kid. I ended up leaving that school because of him. Fast forward almost a decade later, I went to a bush party which was hosted by a mutual friend of Joel, who used to be Joel's best friend. Anyway, Joel shows up, pretty drunk already, and I was there with my little brother. I was 22, my brother was 20, and we also had a pretty good buzz going on. Joel walks over to us, and he looks at me and looks at my brother and calls us both names and is being belligerent. Nice to see that some people never change. I don't even think he recognized me as that kid from school. I was in great shape and built up my self-confidence since then. I think he just thought of me as the guy who stole his best friend. I eventually got tired of him harping on my brother, and I told him to get lost. He turned around like he was going to leave, but swung back around and punched my little brother in the face. The absolute pure rage I felt in that moment cannot be described. Like history repeating itself or something, I felt all that anger and shame built up from that year of bullying now being projected onto my little brother. This was it. The universe had presented an opportunity to me to take a stand to the kid who had ruined an entire year of my childhood. I beat the wheels off that guy. Didn't know I even had it in me. I had gotten on top of him and swung for the fences. His friends ended up coming over and pulling me off of him. They had me pinned. Joel came over, leaking from his face, and tried to kick me in the head. Before he could land it, my brother spear tackled him to the ground. My other friend showed up by this point, and Joel and his buds ended up leaving the party right after. It's one of the best experiences to my name.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 5. Had my share of bullies growing up too. Being super introverted, I spent my free time all winter in the gym that was built and left well outfitted by the home's previous owner. Most of my bullies were our star wrestlers. While in school, I took first in shot put and arm wrestling in inter-school competition, and that was it. Other than being known for being the guy that aced most tests and took no notes and writing my computer science class assignment in C language instead of the language that my dad hadn't seen since 1988. Years later, I had been to Japan and Turkey, Bosnia, and the Czech Republic. I ran into one who walked up, said he was sorry for how he treated me, that he heard I had traveled and done several interesting things. He gave me a card and told me he married his high school girlfriend, and if I needed a job, let him know. I was passing his place in our small town and sacrificed my truck head-on to stop another truck from running over his toddler. The other bully wasn't so great. I became a target at a party, and when we went outside, I was helping with the grill when I got domed, and after slowly turning around and seeing his eyes widen, I handed a friend my only beer that year, and in 3 punches cost him a lot of bridge work, 3 broken ribs, and a broken wrist. We think his wrist may have been broken in the swing to my head, but it was a shock to the whole party. His brother came and got him, and nobody reported it, since it was an old story needing an ending. My brother knew the guy was a jerk. Funny enough, his girlfriend ended up spending the night with me and the following 2.5 months until she moved out of state for a job. He's decent to me now, but the girlfriend is the one I regret not keeping in touch with. Story 6. The best ones are when the teachers are the bullies and proof they were losers to begin with. I'm from Venezuela, so things might not have been the same as the American high school experience. But I do remember a pair of crazy stories from my high school. There was this little arrogant woman, totally invested in a cloak of competency she didn't actually have. Long story short, she was mean, screeched at me once right to my ear in front of everyone, and certainly had some weird crush on me, which was a tendency of hers. She ended up having an affair with a guy younger than me. We were minors. And fast forward like 7 years later, I encounter her out in public looking like a complete pauper afraid of her own shadow. She was totally afraid of looking at me in the eyes. She definitely looked broken. If you read this little rant and you're young, thank you before all. And secondly, I tell you, don't cling to past experiences from childhood. They hold you back and keep you mentally insane. Detach from them, and you'll be surprised to see how those very people were and still will be subdued and controlled by those patterns of behavior that generated so much havoc in the past. It's a very mature way to think about it. If you're away from that person who had bullied you, they really don't have any power over you. The only thing that's remaining is those mental memories. I know for some people there has to be some therapy involved and they might have difficulty with it. I understand that. But letting that stuff go can be a really big boost. Story 7. Was heavily bullied in elementary school by a new student because I was extremely autistic. He managed to make me lose all my friends and ostracize me from the rest of the grade into complete isolation. I eventually moved away and have grown accustomed to being alone, and eventually made it into college and have mostly overcome the worst of my autistic side. On the first day I was on campus, I ran into the bully over 10 years later, and he recognized me on the spot. I was completely blindsided by all of this, and acting on impulse, let him exchange numbers with me. I stuck around for a bit and learned he was going into nursing before leaving. Afterwards, I had a choice to make, to either pay him back for all the trauma he put me through, or to forgive him and let it go. I sent him a text message saying that while I did forgive him, his actions had caused me issues that still affect me today. So I requested to never speak to me again and to stay away. He agreed, and I never saw him again. Story 8. Mine walked up to me about 5 years after we finished school. Was at the pub in my hometown. Just got back from a deployment, so was trying to be normal again, with my older brother chatting smack. He walked up and asked if he could buy me a beer. I said, yeah. We sat down, and he started sort of crying because he had been feeling so bad for what he had done to me all our school lives, and that it was actually messing with his head and he was sorry. We ended up talking for a couple of hours, and I found out he had been abused by his awful old man all his life, and picked me to take his frustration out on because I was a small guy who wouldn't do anything back. I felt actually bad for him because deep down he was just a hurt kid himself. I make sure to go see him when I can to catch up every couple of months because he turned into a stand-up dude, would do anything for anyone. He actually teaches kids with disabilities, a huge 180 turn because he didn't give a care at school. Actually quite proud to call him a friend. Story 9. I was a typical insecure and awkward high school kid. Didn't have many friends and I was picked on for my small size being the late bloomer I was. What surprised me was that several of the people who picked on me and excluded me from everything all of a sudden wanted to reach out to me again after high school ended, like nothing had ever happened and we were friends the whole time. I don't know if they were trying to apologize or if they had some revised version of history in their minds that made them believe we were close. I guess I'll never know, because I never responded to any of it. I'd rather not relive the worst part of my life if I don't have to. I wish them all the best in their adult lives, but I just don't understand why you'd look down on someone and refuse to associate with them for 4 years and then later on try to rekindle a friendship that never existed because they wanted to look cool in front of their peers. Story 10. My bully was a typical jock. Played baseball, would pick on me for no reason. I'm gay, but not overtly effeminate. In fact, people didn't even suspect in high school. He just disliked something about me, even though I was pretty well liked. 10 years later, we ran into each other through friends in Chicago. I had let the past go, so I went right up to him and said hello, asked how he'd been, and we moved on with the night like it was nothing, even though he was quiet around me. I sensed no hostility. Later on in the night, I get a knock at my hotel room door, and guess who? Long story short, he had an intense crush on me all throughout high school. It certainly explains why he'd go out of his way to show off his girlfriend back then. I got the sense he wanted something while we talked, and sure enough, we hooked up. It's a cool little story, if I leave out the parts where he goes crazy and becomes obsessed. Story 11. I knew a guy who bullied others, but I got lucky and never had to deal with him. A year after high school, he saw one of his old victims and decided it was a smart idea to pull out a pistol and scare him. Little did the bully know, the victim's older brother who was with him was a gang member who also had a gun. The brother was also accompanied by 3 gang members of the same gang. The bully pointed the pistol to get a scream out of the victim for shucks and giggles, only for the victim's brother and his gang members to shoot the bully unalive. The bully's gun was just a BB pistol with the orange cap painted black. I don't know what else happened since I was out of state at that time. Story 12. Not really a personal experience, but my dad told me how he was the school bully in high school. Not a part of his past he is by any means proud of, but it did help him give perspective to his often bullied son. He told me that deep down, every single bully is a feckless little coward. He didn't make the abuse I got any easier, but as I got older, it helped me understand where most of them were coming from. And instead of fear or hatred, I only felt contempt and pity. It was that little secret that gave me the strength to endure my abusers and learn the right lessons from their overreach. Story 13. Had a teacher in high school tell me I was a worthless idiot who'd be burning fries for the rest of my life. Had my mom found him on Facebook and sent him the link to the restaurant I was exec chef at with the words, "You like apples?" Pretty sure I make more money than him now. Success is sweet revenge. Story 14. As a guy who was bullied so badly as a kid that I struggled to socialize in my 30s, I blame the problem mainly on public schools' prison-like design. Kids are naturally insecure, and forcing them to spend most of their development in that kind of environment is a recipe for creating psychopaths. And that was before they woke up insanity.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.